Greetings, everyone. My name is Ryder, and this is gonna be this is my third video diary entry about how the mission trip in Turkey has been going for the past couple weeks. The last time I made one of these was on my last free day, which was last Friday. And I'm not doing the best at keeping up with numbers, but basically, and today's Friday as well, as I'm filming this, the following Friday. I didn't get to upload the video yet, though, just because the internet where we are, I have internet and I have data on my phone, but it's a little slower, and the video was 30 minutes and that would take forever to upload, so I'm gonna wait until I'm back at Istanbul for a couple of days before I go home and we have better internet where I'm staying at Istanbul. So yeah. But yeah, so overall, just kind of quick rundown of what has been going on. And once again, if you're watching this, thank you so much. But also, this is just me kind of rambling, and it's just kind of like a stream of consciousness about, my thoughts and feelings on how things have been the past week or so. Because I'm not really much of a journaler or a writer. I feel more comfortable, and it's easier for me to just kind of get all my thoughts and feelings out on the camera or talking to someone. But if talking to someone is not an option, then talking to the camera is a good option, and I did that a lot in the past as well when I was younger. But yeah, so when it comes to last Friday was our day off, and I just kind of chilled out. I had some good food. I rested. Saturday, we did our first and only workshop while we're on tour. So what it was is that we went to another church in Antalya that's different from the one that we're staying at the moment, and we were able to use their space for a couple of hours to do some workshops. So what that meant is that, we were there in the afternoon. We had lunch beforehand. And we did a workshop. So one of the members of our team, Margarita, she was teaching folks how to do painting. So we did some painting together, and she used it as a springboard. She shared her painting first and used it to share a story, and that story was about the gospel and how Jesus has transformed her life. And then we all got the opportunity to do some painting and share our story. So other people got up and shared their paintings and their stories, and I went up and shared mine, which was a cross, and there was darkness around the cross, but then there was all colors in the middle of the cross. And I used it as a way to talk about how I struggled with my mental health a lot when I was younger, but when Jesus came into my life, all of that darkness went away, and he's brought a lot of joy into my life as well. So and I know at least one person had a strong reaction to my testimony, and it actually was one of the young women that I think helped translate for me, even though she wasn't part of our group. She just did it out of the kindness of her heart, because there were some things that the translator was struggling with. I think I was using some complicated terms, and I kind of forgot that that could be an issue with translation. But basically, what was I gonna say? But afterwards, we had a little bit of time left because the painting took up a fair amount of time and the storytelling, but it was really important because people got to hear the gospel and they got to hear testimonies. So some of them were folks from the church, some of them were folks that just saw the sign outside and came in, or they heard about it online and they came in. So after that, though, we got to break up into groups. There was a dance workshop, and I was also teaching people how to do the balloon animals. So a small group went off into the other room, and they were doing dance together, and I think listening to some worship music. And me and a couple other folks, we did the balloons together. I taught them how to do some basic balloons, like a sword and a flower and a dog, because I feel like those are the three basic ones, and they give you a good foundation for balloon twisting because they help you learn very important twisting techniques. And regardless, I think it's just fun, and it's good when somebody can learn something and get it on within their first couple of tries, and it's yes, I did it, this is so cool. But yeah, so where was I going with this? So yeah, that was one of the things that we did. And while we were doing that, there was one young woman, and just for like confidentiality reasons, like like I don't want to share her name, but like there was this young woman, and she came and she was so excited to learn how to do the balloons. So she brought her own balloons and her own pump, which I thought was awesome. And she really wanted to do the balloons. So she was one of the first people that sat down and wanted to do it with me. Some other folks showed up, and I taught them how to do the balloons as well, and that was a lot of fun. And like the thing that I thought was cool was I got to talk with her a little bit, and she said that she was really moved by my testimony. And I asked her if like she's like come to the church or something before, and she said she had only come to the church one time before, but that when she's come, she's always felt hopeful. And I explained to her, that I believe Jesus came into this world to give people hope, just like he gave me hope. And I could tell she was getting a little teary-eyed, and, she didn't want to talk too much more about it. But, she said, like, I'm still exploring, I'm still looking for answers. And I'm like, that's okay. God loves you. He's patient with us. Like, keep looking, keep coming here, keep searching for answers. This is a good place to look, this referring to the church we were in. So just encourage her to keep coming and keep searching, and I think the church is a great place to search for answers with these kind of questions about spiritual things. The one thing that she said was, she's like, I know that we haven't met before, but I feel like I already know you in my heart, and then, so that was our Saturday, and that was a lot of fun. Then Sunday was a rest day. They do a service at the church here on Sundays in like the early afternoon. Originally, like, I woke up early, I had breakfast, I was gonna go to church with everybody else, but I got there and I was like 30 minutes into the service, and I realized like how tired I was, because I'm used to having like 3 days off work, and we did something on Saturday, and I felt really tired, and I just wasn't present, so I wasn't getting anything out of the service, and I just knew I needed rest. So like I left midway through the service, and, like I was a little worried about it coming across as rude, but I knew I needed rest. So, I left, I got something to eat, and then I took a nap, and I wound up sleeping for like 4 hours. So I think I needed the extra sleep. So that was my Sunday. Then, like I woke up kind of late at night. I had some snacks, and I went to bed like within a few more hours, and slept for like 6 or 7 more hours. So I think that day I really just needed the extra rest because I was tired. I know that other people after church, they went out to lunch, they went to the beach and stuff, and that sounds like a lot of fun, but I have to remind myself, like, God told me that I would do all of the shows that we're doing on this tour. I know some people have had to miss like a show or two if they weren't feeling well, but God told me I'd be able to do all the shows. I was worried that I wouldn't because of all my health, but I've been able to do all of them so far, like all 6 of them and our workshop, by his grace. And I think just listening to him when he's telling me to rest is important, and just conserving my energy, like if that means that I'm not going to the beach, or like going out for baklava like late at night, like it's okay. I know that, those are things that are fun, but I didn't come here to go to the beach. I didn't come here to eat baklava. Like, if I can eat good food, and I've been eating some really yummy food that they've been serving for us at the church. Breakfast has been yummy. The places we've gone for dinner before our shows have been yummy, but like, that's not the focus, so if I get to see cool places and do cool things and eat yummy food along the way, I'm happy. But I have to realize that like that shouldn't be my focus. So yeah, so that was Sunday. That was a rest day. Then Monday we were gonna do a show, but there was a problem. So we were at a very big very big park in Turkey, in Antalya, and it was called the I'm probably not gonna pronounce this right, but the Konya Konya Alte Park. It's this like really, really big park. Um, and basically like I'm just gonna change where. Yeah, I still kind of have to like crouch down because of the bunk bed. But yeah, so basically, this park, um, it's like really big. There's so many shops and restaurants nearby. There's like a Starbucks, there's stores, like it's right near the beach. So there's a lot of people going to the beach and hanging out. So we had set up like in the park, but I guess it was like a private part of the park, and we were doing this show without permissions. Like at the other park where we had done our first two shows, it was a park where we had applied for permissions and received them, but this was one where the group, I think, had tried to apply for permissions, or they were going to, but you could be waiting months, and we didn't have months to wait because we were going on tour in like a couple of weeks. So we just figured we'd try it without the permissions and just hope for the best. So the problem though was, because we didn't have those permissions, the police came and they just shut it down. We didn't get the option to be like, oh, can we just do acoustic music without the amps and just have like the dance and me juggling and stuff. It was like, they were like, oh, well, you have like loud music and you have painting, so this is an event. If you're gonna do an event, you need a permit or whatever. And like, we didn't have that, so we just had to go. So basically what we wound up doing is we wound up packing up everything, and we didn't know what to do at first. Thankfully though, like we were able to shift gears like pretty quickly. So I know some folks went off, like two folks went off and they started like talking to people about Jesus like around the park. So they just kind of went off, and the rest of us were like, okay, what now? But I know that they were led by the Spirit to do that, and it's good to listen to the Holy Spirit when He speaks to you. So then we were like, okay, so what do we do? So we moved all of our stuff to this like grassy patch, and we just kind of sat in a circle. And one of the guys in our group, Benny, he plays guitar, so he started playing acoustic guitar, playing some worship music, and we started singing worship music. Then there was the opportunity, because like I felt in my spirit like God was telling me, like don't worry about the performing, like go and talk to people, and that was even as the police were coming. Like I just felt Him saying in my spirit, like scrap the performing, go talk to people. And I think different people heard different things that day, because some people stayed in the worship circle singing and praising the Lord, and that was what they needed. I stayed for a little bit, but then there were some other guys, and they were like, hey, we're gonna go and talk to people. Do any of you want to come with? And like our group leader, she was like, you don't have to go if you don't. But I'm like, I feel in the spirit like the Lord is telling me to go. I need to go. So I went, and I think we had like I think it was just me and like one other guy, or maybe two other guys, or maybe I think it was just me and like two other guys, and we went and we were talking to people, and we had a couple good conversations with some folks. Some of them were tourists, some of them were young men. Towards the end, one of the guys in our group, because he speaks Turkish, he was talking to these two young Turkish men like in like their language, and like he was able to like talk with them about Jesus, and I think give them info about a church, give them some cards where they could order a free Bible and stuff. And I think that was the best conversation that we had that night. Some of the other ones we were getting into like apologetics, or we were just talking about our lives, and we never really got to get into any of the things about God and about Jesus. But yeah, I think overall it went well. And because of, like the first couple shows that we did, because I was doing the balloons for the kids afterwards, I didn't really get time to like talk to people during our shows or after our shows. So this was the first time that I had really gotten to like talk with people like about life and about Jesus, like in this country and in Antalya. And I really enjoyed that. Um, so that was our Monday. Then we met up back as a group, and like we took the van home and all of this stuff. And I know that folks were feeling a little discouraged, but I also know that people were quick to rebound and realize like maybe this is what we needed this night. This was God's plan for us. He knows what's best. So maybe this was what we needed for our hearts and our spirits this night. So that was our Monday. Our Tuesday was so much better though. We went back to the same park. Originally, I think there was some doubt, but I know that the leader, like Krista, like she prayed about it and she had felt in her spirit like the Lord was leading her to go back to her park, and there were some doubts, but I told her, I was like, well, because the Lord had told me also like go back, take a chance. And I told her that, and I think she needed that confirmation. And so we went back. We still didn't have permissions. We went to a different part of the Konya Alti Park. And what did we do? What did we do? So we had our show. I think I'm gonna lay down while we record. So, yeah. So we went to a different part of the Konya Alti Park, and this was by far the biggest show that we've done this whole tour. We were there. The police did like drive by like twice, but they never stopped or interfered or told us to stop what we were doing. We did our show like a little later than we had the previous time because we heard that there isn't as much like security, or that it stops late at night, like around like 8. So we set up, we were in a good spot. There were people like that were on the beach, people at the shops, people walking around, and a lot of them were stopping and they were interested. So we got to do our music with the amps. I got to juggle. We had dancers, like we had like everything. And it went like really, really well. And in between the shows, like after each of the shows, because we got to do 2 of them, like we got to talk to people and have good conversations with them. And I think it went really well. So I didn't really have any conversations that like really stood out to me that night, but it was also just nice to be able to like talk to people after the show and get to know them and talk about their lives and stuff like that. So it was just amazing to see the Lord drawing that crowd and to see the police going by, but they didn't even care. And it's because we listened to God and took that chance. He was leading us to go back to this park for a reason. And, like, it all worked out. Oh, I also forgot to mention, on the Monday when our show got canceled, while we were going out witnessing, like in like that small group, the 2 guys that were with me, they needed to use the bathroom, and while I was waiting for them to, and when we were heading back from the bathroom, we ran into that young woman that came to the workshop who I taught how to do the balloons again. And she asked like what we were doing, what was going on. I told her that we were here, we were gonna try and do a show, but it got canceled because the police had told us to stop. But I told her, I'm like, it's okay, and I know that God has a better plan for us tonight. She had said that she had wanted to come to the show but had some other obligations, and that was why she was in the area. And like we just kind of parted ways after that. But it was just interesting to run into her like a second time in just like a couple of days. So then yeah, so that was Monday and Tuesday. Tuesday was amazing. And then Wednesday was kind of a repeat of Monday. So we went back to the Konya Alti Park. We were hoping it would be good like on Tuesday. But as we were setting up, the police came and they told us that once again, because we had painting and music with amps, that it was an event and we needed a permit for the event, so we had to stop. But the thing though is we had some of the Turkish people from like the church that were helping us out, helping us with like setup and tear down and helping us with like translation. So it hasn't just been like us, like, like the, like, you know, 9 to 12 of us in the like taco group that have been on this tour. Like, it hasn't just been us. Like, we've had, like people from the churches in Antalya helping us out, a lot of them young adults, and they've been helping us out. They've been translating for us. They've been helping us with setup and tear down. Some of them have like performed with us because like, some of them like dance and stuff, which is really cool. So we've been getting a lot of help from them. They've also been the ones during the shows like passing out the like clipboards so people could fill out the surveys, so that they have the chance to win the painting at the end of the show, but also like, to ask them what they think about Jesus. If they'd like more info, try to get them connected with the local church, because in reality, like what we're doing, like the shows and stuff and sharing our testimonies and the gospel with people, that is very important. But what these young adults from the church are doing is just as important, if not even more important, because if we're doing these shows but and they hear the gospel, like that's amazing and they can be saved. But also, if they don't have a church to connect with afterwards, the parable of the seed and the sower, it'll be like the seed that, like fell like on the side of the path and the birds came and ate it up, and we don't want that. We want the seed to fall on good soil. So yeah. So what they're doing is like very, very important. Because that's the whole reason why we're here. We want people to hear the gospel and be saved, and we want them to go forth and produce fruit. So we need everybody, all hands on deck. I forget where I was going with this. So the young adults, they wound up from the church, like two of the young men, they wound up talking to the police. They asked if we could still do the show if we took down the amps and we stopped the painting, and they said that that was okay. And at first there was a little confusion, like, okay, well, are we not doing a show? Are we just gonna pack up and like go home? Are we gonna do witnessing to people again like Monday? Like, what are we doing? Eventually, like we had decided to stay and do the show just without the amp, so the music would be acoustic and the singing and playing would just have to be louder, and that we could still have the dancing and we could still have me juggling and we could still have the testimonies. So yeah. So we just needed like all of that. So it was definitely like a toned down show, but the thing that was funny was at least, we only really did like one real show, but even with it toned down, we couldn't attract as big of a crowd as on Tuesday. But we still got a crowd. One thing that did help is while the musicians were playing and people were dancing and stuff, like, I was also reminding folks, like, let's pretend to be a crowd already watching the performance. Because that's something that street performers do in the city. Like, if they have people that are coming to watch, like, having them already there, people are more likely to stop because they see a crowd, and that sends the signal that this is a thing worth stopping to see. So we pretended to be a very enthusiastic audience, like clapping and cheering and all of that, if we weren't performing at that moment. And it kind of worked, and we got some people, and and some of them stayed after the show, and we got to share, like, with them and ask them questions and all of that. During the show, the thing that was funny was, like, I know that God was helping me with this because this was, like, the best juggling performance that I've done so far, and I noticed that when we did the juggling and the dance, like, we got, like, way more people that came, like, and they stuck around for the juggling and the dance acts, which I thought was really cool. After I finished my juggling act, I did get to share like a short version of my testimony. After that, some people did kind of wander off, but we still had some people stay, and one person talked to me a little bit afterwards, and Like it didn't seem like he was too interested in like learning about like Jesus and stuff, but he appreciated me sharing his story, and he could tell that it was real and that God's done a big work in my life. So I'm hoping that maybe he'd at least go home and like reflect on it. Um so yeah, so it was a toned down version. We still got to perform, but not as many people, but we still had some good conversations afterwards. And the thing that I think was important to remember is, like Jesus told that parable about the shepherd that left the 99 to get the one sheep. Like, it's not always about like the numbers. Like, obviously we'd love to have like tons of people come to these shows and like hundreds of people like hear the gospel like in one night and all of them be saved on the spot. But like I think that during this tour, outside of like that big performance that we did on Tuesday, a lot of our shows have been smaller. But that also means that the people that have been coming, like God has been leading them to come, like they've been led by the Spirit to come. And I think that that's very powerful. So it hasn't been as much about tons of people. Like, it's been more like quality interactions over quantity of interactions. And I think that it's important to remember that, like, this has been God's will for this trip, and try to see things through His eyes instead of our own eyes. And that's something that I'm trying to remember as well. And then Thursday, we went to another park. I think it's called the Yalim Park. So it was a little closer to where we're staying. It's so it was like a much shorter drive to get there. Not as big of a park. There were a lot of cats. Our show was pretty late. Like once again, we only did one show because by the time we wrapped up, there weren't a lot of people and it was pretty dark out. So some of the musicians were still playing music, and like I was talking to folks and stuff. Oh, I forgot to mention what happened on Wednesday after our show. So after our show on Wednesday, I wound up meeting someone because afterwards we were just kind of talking to people and like goofing around a bit. Like the musicians were playing a bit after the show. But I wound up like, Krista had brought a set of poi with her and I was spinning them a little bit, and I was just kind of goofing around with like the wooden stick that I've been balancing on my nose, like spinning it like a staff. And one guy, I saw him and he was spinning like meteors, which are like poi. And I just came up to him and we started talking and stuff, and then a little boy came up and like I gave him like the poi that I was using, and like he showed the little boy how to like spin the poi and stuff, and we were having fun and we were talking, and like he invited me to the group of like, it's like a group of kind of like flow artists that are in Antalya. So I said that I would check it out. They said that they normally do something on like Saturday or Sunday, so maybe I'll wind up going to something this weekend if I have the energy, but I guess I'll see. We didn't really wind up talking too much about the gospel. When he asked like what I was doing here, I told him about the shows and how we use the performing arts as a way to talk about Jesus, but I didn't really dive any further than that. Like I was just kind of having fun, like, talking with him and stuff. And I guess he's done contact staff for like 8 years and has done like professional performances and like fire spinning and stuff. And the meteors, he was really good at them, but he said he had only been doing them for 4 months and just really likes them. So yeah. And what else was there? Yeah. So yeah, and then Thursday, yeah, we went to the Yalim Park. There were a lot of cats there. One thing that was really sad before the performances, there was one little cat, and he or she wasn't doing so well in the heat and was passing away. I asked if there was anything we can do, but people said it was too late and the cat was gonna pass away. It was only a matter of time, and I love cats, so it was really hard for me to see and to know that there was nothing we could do for him or her, but the little cat did pass away by the end of the night. And the only thing I've been thinking about is just like, I know when I die and I go to heaven, I'll see that little cat. And I know that God is comforting that cat now. I tried not to think about it too much. I really love animals and especially cats, and it was really, really hard for me to see that. Um, yeah, then we did our show. We only got to do one because it was a little late and a little dark out. Um, it was really hard for me to see the beanbags when I was juggling because of the lighting, but I was able to see just like the tiniest bit of light from the lamp, like reflecting on the balls. So I was still able to juggle. There were a few more drops than I would have thought, but the crowd was like clapping and really liked the performance. So, I think that that's God's grace right there. And afterwards, like I did like talk with like some folks a little bit. And I also, oh yeah, this was the show where like, I don't think it was the Wednesday show. It was the Thursday show where, one of the guys like he came up afterwards and he was talking to me. And yeah, this was when I don't think it was Wednesday. Like, he didn't want to learn as much about Jesus, but he thanked me for sharing my testimony and said that it was real and could see that God has like made like a big change in my life. So yeah, that's when that happened last night. I guess this is why I'm recording this now, because all the memories might get a little jumbled in my head, because there's been so much going on these past few weeks. But yeah, so yeah, I guess I'm just kind of rambling now. But then after the show, I wound up seeing that young woman again. She had come to the park, and the young woman who I taught to do the balloons at the workshop, like about a week prior. And, so I sat down, I talked with her a little bit. She opened up to me about a bit about like her life and what's going on at like home and with her family and stuff. And it was the first time where we were talking a bit more. I opened up a bit more about my life, and she explained that just like she feels like something different is like happening, like there's changes that are happening in her life. She explained how she feels a lot of hope at the church when she's been meeting Christians, how she feels like very loved and very supported by them. And she felt like, she was almost like being like led, like she keeps meeting Christians and it's like not a coincidence. And I just encouraged her, to just keep like listening to like where her heart is leading her, where her spirit is leading her. And I explained a bit to her about what my experience was like when I first started going to the church that I go to, and how kind and loving everyone was, and how I had never felt anything like that before in my life. And I did get the chance to share the gospel message with her. And I think she was thinking about it. There wasn't as much of like she never really like pushed back, but I feel like she was even more receptive to it this time than the previous time when I talked about Jesus, and I got to share like the full gospel message with her. And then I forget what else we talked about. I think just a bit about like our lives and what she's been up to this summer and stuff like that, and it was a really good conversation. So yeah. And then that brings us to Friday, which is today. So it was our free day. I got up early and had breakfast. And then, I started to read my Bible. But there's a young boy that comes to the church that we're staying at like every day. His name is Tamai, and he like we've been hanging out, and like he makes like bracelets and stuff, and he showed me how he does them. And I told him like maybe I could show you how I do the balloon animals. And I figured Friday would be a good day, so we were gonna do that in the morning. So then he knocked on my door, and like the room that I'm in, and we started doing the balloons together for a little bit. Then I had to go to the store and get some stuff for our group for breakfast for the last 2 days that we're at Antalya for Saturday and Sunday. Then I, like, and before that, I read some more of my Bible. And then, I took a nap. I got something to eat. I went to get bubble tea afterwards, and then I came back home, and I was watching this silly movie about a dog that is like a hero, called Cool Dog. It was free on YouTube, so I just watched it. And now I'm recording this, and then I'm probably going to take a shower and try to go to bed at a reasonable time because I think we're doing our final show tomorrow. And God told me that I would be able to do all of our shows. So I am pretty tired. I would like the rest, but it's one more show, and we're only here for like a few more days, and we're leaving for Antalya, going back to Istanbul on Sunday. So, and then my flight from Istanbul to home is Wednesday afternoon, so, I do want to do some shopping for souvenirs when I get back to Istanbul. I could probably do a little bit of that with my last like day or two here in Antalya as well. But what was I gonna say? But I figure if I want time to do nothing, I can do that on like the Monday or Tuesday that I'm in Istanbul. I can probably get some souvenirs here too. Like the biggest things that I really want to get are like, like I already got like a couple of books that they have at the cafe of like testimonies of people in Turkey that have come to know Jesus. So I got a copy for myself, and I got two other copies that I want to give to the church so that people could like read them like at their own leisure, because we do have a small church library. So I thought that would be cool. I also wanted to get some like, big bags of like tea or coffee and some like Turkish delights to like bring back for, like coworkers, for people at church, for my roommates, like stuff like that. And I guess the final thing that I wanted to do for like souvenirs is like, oh, the cafe also has wristbands. I might want to get a wristband for myself. But I guess outside of that, and I could probably get things like the tea and the Turkish delights like here. But the final thing really is just like I want to get something like nice for my mom. And Krista has suggested maybe getting her like some like nice like coffee cups, or like a purse, like a coin purse or something like that she'd like. And the only other thing that I really want is I really want to get a lamp, because the Turkish lamps look really, really cool. So I think at Istanbul, those are the two things that I want to get. As I'm saying this out loud now, I could probably get like the sweets and the tea and coffee here, and just bring it on the plane, and I think it would be fine because I don't have a whole lot of stuff in my carry-on to begin with. My carry-on was half empty. So yeah. But with all that being said, I will probably not be able to upload this until I get back to Istanbul in a couple of days. But thank you for listening to this, and just letting me kind of have the time to get my thoughts out. I hope this wasn't too boring. I think that when I get the chance, like when I get home, to kind of put all of this info together along with like, like the videos and photos and stuff that we've all taken during the trip, like, and I'm able to give a presentation at the church, my hope is that someone could film me while I present to the church for like 10-15 minutes, and that I could upload that, and that'll be a shorter, more coherent version of like what our trip was like and what we were able to accomplish as a group. And maybe something more coherent about, like how God has moved in me and lessons that I've learned from this as well. So I think that the reports of the church will be like a more coherent rundown of what happened, and maybe me making a more coherent video about like lessons that I've learned and how I've grown during this trip, because I feel like God has grown me in a few different ways in these past couple of weeks. But with all that being said, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. And for now, take care, stay safe, have a wonderful rest of the day, and know that Jesus loves you, and I love you too. Bye bye.